Keeping chicken fresh without a fridge. Amish secrets unveiled. Storing chicken without a refrigerator may sound like a challenge fit for a survivalist show, but for the Amish, it's just part of daily life. With generations-old techniques passed down through families, they've perfected the art of keeping poultry fresh in ways you might not expect. In a world where modern convenience reigns, the Amish use resourceful and creative food preservation methods that inspire both simplicity and sustainability. Join us as we dive into these fascinating preservation techniques that blend tradition with practicality, offering a glimpse into a lifestyle that flourishes on minimalism and natural solutions. Ever thought of burying food underground? It might sound strange, but for the Amish, storing chicken below ground is perfectly sensible and remarkably effective. Imagine no humming refrigerator, no risk of freezer burn, just good old-fashioned earth and smart methods. The ground has served as nature's cooler long before we had electricity. For the Amish, it's like a hidden pantry that keeps food consistently cool without the cost or hassle of maintenance. This natural cooler preserves food by keeping it at a stable temperature, similar to how caves remain cool year-round, regardless of outdoor temperatures. Underground storage works wonders because bacteria and mold struggle to thrive in consistently cool environments. As temperatures rise, food spoils faster, but beneath the earth, this process slows considerably. The Amish realized they don't need electric coolers when nature already provides the ideal setting. And here's a fun fact: humans have used underground food storage for thousands of years. Archaeologists have discovered ancient storage pits for preserving meat that date back over 12,000 years. Of course, a simple hole isn't enough. It must be deep enough to ensure safety, but shallow enough that it's easy to access. Some Amish families dig root cellars, underground rooms lined with wood or stone. These cellars offer the perfect conditions: cool, dark and dry, keeping food fresh longer. Watching how the Amish pack their chicken is a lesson in ingenuity. They wrap it tightly in cloth and sometimes add wax paper, just enough to keep out the dirt while allowing the meat to breathe. I tried it myself once after a friend recommended it, and burying a roast in my backyard was surprisingly satisfying. The challenge came when I had to remember exactly where I buried it. I worried that I might have a science experiment waiting underground, but when I dug it up, the meat was still as fresh as the day I'd buried it. This method takes away the constant worry of monitoring a fridge to see if your leftovers will last another day. Plus, the flavor of the meat somehow deepens, as if the earth adds a subtle seasoning of its own. Interestingly, early American settlers also relied on underground storage to endure harsh winters when fresh food was scarce. While we depend on electricity for convenience, these simple methods are a powerful reminder that ancient solutions often work just as well, if not better. There's also something uniquely satisfying about this low-tech solution. It's like saying to modern life, I can thrive without you. Digging in the earth to store food can feel more rewarding than relying on any app or gadget. Another ancient technique the Amish use is smoking meat. The smoky aroma brings to mind summer barbecues, lazy afternoons, and family gatherings. For the Amish, however, smoking chicken isn't just about flavor. It's a way to keep meat edible for months without refrigeration. Native Americans and early settlers relied on smoking to make it through tough winters, and the Amish have kept this tradition alive, turning each chicken into both a culinary delight and a long-lasting food supply. The science behind smoking meat is clever. When wood burns, it releases natural preservatives that give the meat its distinct smoky taste, while also discouraging bacteria growth. Slow drying during smoking reduces the moisture content, leaving fewer places for bacteria to thrive. I've tried smoking meat myself, and it's a mix of art, science, and a little caveman spirit. The challenge is keeping the fire steady, not too hot, not too cold, like trying to manage a toddler who could easily start a fire. There's also the debate over which wood to use. The Amish prefer hardwoods like hickory or oak for their robust flavor, and some families even have their own secret wood blends. One Amish farmer joked, "We'd tell you our wood choice, but then we'd have to smoke you too." Smoked chicken doesn't just last for months, it actually improves over time, developing richer flavors as it rests. The best part? Once properly smoked and stored, it's ready to eat whenever you need it, whether for soup, sandwiches, or as a quick snack. Even if you're not into camping or prepping, having some smoked chicken on hand feels empowering. like you're a step ahead of modern life. We're proud to promote The Lost Superfoods by Claude Davis on our channel. This book, authored by an experienced prepper, dives into 126 superfoods and food preservation methods from past crises like the Great Depression. This is knowledge that's hard to find elsewhere, and we believe it's crucial to pass down these life-sustaining skills to future generations. Claude's book is a resource for anyone looking to understand the highly nutritious foods and methods that can make a difference in times of crisis. You can also find Herbal Remedies by Nicole Apelian in our store. If you're watching this on TV, check out our YouTube channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet to find these books by following the link in our channel description or any video description. When most people think of canning, they imagine jars of jams or pickles. Not exactly the first thought for a hearty dinner, but the Amish have perfected the art of preserving nearly anything in jars, including chicken. The process may sound like something out of a high-tech lab, with airtight seals and bacteria getting eliminated, but in reality, it's quite simple. Fresh chicken is placed in a jar and sealed tightly using a pressure canner, making it completely safe and bacteria-free. What you end up with is chicken that can sit on your pantry shelf, fully preserved and ready for use for years. When I first heard about chicken in a jar, I thought it was a joke. But no, it's real and surprisingly delicious. You can open a jar months or even years after canning, and the chicken will taste as fresh as the day you sealed it. The fun part? Telling people, "Oh, I canned some chicken yesterday." The reactions are priceless. It sounds odd until you try it, and then it becomes a handy trick you'll wonder how you ever lived without. The process itself is fascinating. Once the jars are sealed under high pressure, the chicken enters a kind of suspended animation, waiting in storage until it's ready to be enjoyed. For the Amish, canning chicken is a highly practical solution. It means they don't have to worry about power outages or spoiled meat. If the world ended tomorrow, they'd still have jars of chicken stocked up, ready to cook. But canning chicken isn't only for emergencies. It can make daily life easier too. On those days when cooking feels like a chore, knowing you have cooked chicken in a jar can be a lifesaver. Just heat it up, and dinner's ready. No thawing, no hassle, and definitely no sad microwave meals. This preservation method is genius, not just for freshness, but for peace of mind. No more wondering how long that container in the fridge has been sitting there. Jars keep everything safe and sound, labeled and ready for whenever you need them. Properly canned chicken can last about 3 to 5 years, a meal ready to go at any time, as if saying, "I've got you covered." Now, here's where things get interesting. Fermenting chicken. It sounds strange, but once you understand it, it makes perfect sense. The Amish didn't stumble upon this method by chance. They realized that when the right bacteria take hold, they crowd out the harmful bacteria. Think of it as giving chicken a natural protective shield. What might seem like a risky science experiment is actually an ancient technique that turns potential spoilage into something unique and safe. The concept is simple. Instead of fearing bacteria, the Amish encourage the good kinds to thrive in a controlled fermentation. These beneficial microbes create distinct flavors and preserve the meat. If you're familiar with foods like kimchi or sauerkraut, the process might sound similar, but don't expect the chicken to taste like either. Fermented chicken has its own distinct flavor, and for some, it's an acquired taste. Describing it is a bit like telling someone you made chicken yogurt. It draws a mix of curiosity and confusion. But once you try it, it clicks. Trust the process, and the good bacteria do the rest, leaving a flavor that's surprisingly appealing. Fermentation isn't just a trendy technique. Cultures around the world have been doing it for centuries. In Northern Europe, fermented fish has been a staple for ages. And in the Arctic, indigenous people have used fermentation to preserve meat and fat through brutal winters. The Amish are in good company, knowing that this method is not just about flavor, but survival. Another timeless preservation method the Amish use is salting. This technique has been around for ages. Sailors, traders, and soldiers have relied on salt to keep their food edible for centuries. For the Amish, salt is an essential tool in preserving chicken. By rubbing salt onto meat, they draw out moisture, which reduces the places where bacteria can thrive and spoil the meat. Imagine giving your chicken an invisible layer of protection that tastes amazing too. That's what happens when you coat a piece of chicken in salt and let it sit. It feels a bit like an exercise in patience, but the result is a richly flavored, tougher piece of meat that can last far longer than you'd expect outside a fridge. When it's finally time to cook, a quick soak or rinse brings the chicken back to a surprisingly tender state, ready to cook. It's almost poetic. The chicken starts off fresh and juicy, gets preserved through drying, and then returns to its edible glory. If you think about it, the process isn't too far off from mummification, except instead of just admiring it, you're frying it up for dinner. In fact, salted meat was so essential that ships in the 1800s wouldn't set sail without it. Long voyages across unpredictable oceans made fresh food impractical, and salted meat was the one thing sailors could count on to keep them from starving. Every now and then, even the most traditional Amish households make an exception for slightly modern tools like pressure cookers. Sure, they might avoid electricity, but when it comes to making sure chicken stays fresh for months or even years, practicality wins. A pressure cooker isn't just an ordinary pot, it's like a preservation superhero, using heat and high pressure to kill bacteria and lock in flavor. The result? Chicken that seems frozen in time, but tastes as if it was cooked yesterday. What's impressive is how the Amish keep things simple, even with these tools. They aren't interested in trendy gadgets, just in what works. Think of it like a food time capsule. A jar filled with goodness you can open months later and enjoy as though no time has passed. And let's be real, there's something very satisfying about knowing that a meal you made today could still be there for you in a decade. If this sounds futuristic, it's not. Pressure-cooked food has been a staple for doomsday preppers and astronauts alike, lasting a decade with proper storage. The Amish probably aren't planning for the apocalypse, but they are preparing for life's hiccups, like harsh winter storms or days when cooking just feels too much. That jar of chicken is more than food. It's peace of mind in edible form. Now imagine jerky and trail mix combined into one. You get something close to pemmican, a blend of dried meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried berries. For the Amish, this isn't just a quirky experiment, it's a survival tool. Packed with enough nutrition to get through a long winter, it's simple and effective. While some may view pemmican as a survivalist relic, for the Amish it's a practical, calorie-dense food that stood the test of time. High in energy and designed to last, it's like the food version of an old truck. Reliable, sturdy, and always there when you need it. Fur traders and explorers relied on it for good reason. They couldn't afford spoiled food while navigating harsh environments. Just like the Amish can't afford waste in the depths of winter. Sure, offering someone a bite of chicken pemmican might get some raised eyebrows, but the genius lies in its simplicity. A handful of it could fuel a morning of chopping wood or tending the farm. Then there's vinegar pickling, which isn't just about adding a tangy flavor to chicken. It's a smart, low-maintenance preservation technique. The acidity of vinegar creates an environment where bacteria can't survive, making the chicken safe to eat for months. It's like a tough marinade that tells bacteria, not today. This method may seem unusual, but it's been around for ages. During World War I, soldiers depended on pickled meat to survive in the trenches, and the Amish continue to use this practical approach. Yes, the idea of vinegary chicken might raise a few eyebrows at the dinner table, but once you try it, it's hard not to appreciate the ingenuity behind it. And if you've ever found yourself dealing with moldy leftovers, you'll see the brilliance in having chicken that's ready to eat, straight from a brine. When convenience stores aren't nearby, the genius of vinegar-soaked meat becomes clear. After all, if it could sustain soldiers in war zones, surely it can handle a curious glance or two. The Amish aren't just making snacks when they dehydrate chicken, they're creating food built to last. Drying chicken into jerky isn't only about making it taste good, though it certainly does. It's about removing every last drop of moisture so bacteria don't stand a chance. Without water, those pesky microbes have to move on to spoil someone else's food. Dehydration is beautiful in its simplicity. You hang the chicken to dry, sometimes in the sun or near a warm stove, and let nature do the work. It's food preservation at its most natural, turning fresh chicken into a long-lasting, shelf-stable ingredient that's ready whenever you are. Amish chicken preservation techniques. A journey back in time. It might feel like you're playing the slowest waiting game in the world, but the payoff is undeniably tasty. Properly dried chicken isn't just a snack, it's a survival staple. Travelers and soldiers for centuries have carried dried meat, knowing it would last wherever their journeys led. There's something reassuring about being able to pack a piece of chicken without worrying about refrigeration. It's the kind of food prep that would make any modern prepper envious. Once you taste Amish jerky, going back to store-bought doesn't seem appealing. The real thing has an old-school charm, much like the Amish folks themselves. Picture taking a fresh piece of chicken and covering it in a thick layer of lard. It sounds unconventional, but this isn't just some quirky cooking hack. It's a tried-and-true method the Amish still swear by. Lard acts as a barrier, keeping air and bacteria out, almost like armor for the chicken. Once encased in this fat fortress, it can sit on a shelf for months without needing refrigeration. The beauty of this method lies in its simplicity. Cook the chicken, pack it tightly, and pour melted lard until it's fully submerged. As the fat cools and solidifies, it creates a seal that not only preserves the chicken, but locks in its flavors. This method has roots in old European traditions, used in times when winter food shortages were very real threats. There's something satisfying about using fat as both food and preservation. It's a bit like outsmarting nature. In today's low-fat obsessed world, it's almost ironic that fat is the key to making food last. But this approach isn't just practical. It also leaves each bite of chicken tender and tasty. The Amish also use sour milk in their preservation toolkit. Sour milk preservation might sound like a mistake, but to the Amish, it's a smart way to keep chicken fresh while adding a flavorful twist. By marinating chicken in sour or buttermilk, they take advantage of natural fermentation, which produces lactic acid that discourages bacteria. This keeps the chicken safe longer than other methods. Like yogurt, sour milk's natural fermentation extends its freshness, and the acidity gives the chicken a tender, unique taste. This preservation technique isn't just about function, it brings a delicious twist. The tang from the sour milk adds a creamy, zingy layer to the meat. Imagine biting into chicken that not only tastes fresh, but has a hint of creaminess. By adding herbs like garlic or rosemary to the mix, the Amish elevate this preservation method into something gourmet. This approach embodies their resourcefulness. They make the most of what's on hand, ensuring the chicken stays fresh while enhancing its taste. Then there's the Amish method of preserving chicken with ice. Using ice as a preservation tool might sound odd to many, but for the Amish, it's as natural as breathing. They see ice as a powerful preservation aid, especially during the cold winter months when nature itself becomes a freezer. They pack the chicken in containers surrounded by ice, making sure the cold stays consistent to prevent spoilage. This frosty cocoon keeps the chicken preserved just as effectively as any freezer, halting bacterial growth and locking in flavor. Packing chicken in ice isn't as simple as plopping it in a tub, though. It's almost a science. They carefully monitor temperatures, adding ice if it melts too quickly. It's like giving the chicken a chill bath until it's ready for the dinner table. This method, while requiring a bit of attention, is surprisingly effective, preserving moisture and flavor. In a world where food wastage is rampant, the Amish show us how we could preserve food naturally with minimal waste. According to the USDA, roughly 30 to 40% of food in the US goes uneaten. The Amish's thoughtful approach to preservation reminds us there are simpler, more sustainable ways to manage food. Then there's brining, a classic preservation method that the Amish have perfected. For them, brining isn't just a seasoning trick, it's a transformative process that turns chicken into a juicy, flavorful delight. A simple salt and water solution, sometimes enhanced with sugar or spices, is all it takes. The chicken soaks in this brine, absorbing moisture and flavor, making it plumper and tastier. Why add salt, you might ask? While we often hear about the downsides of salt, in moderation, it's an age-old preservation aid. Salt creates an environment where harmful bacteria can't thrive, extending the chicken's freshness. Brining has been around for centuries, especially in times before refrigeration was common, and it's a perfect tool for those living close to the land. Imagine the scene, a family picnic where everyone's raving about the juicy brined chicken on the table. That's the beauty of brining. It turns chicken into something worth savoring. This technique isn't limited to the Amish either. Many modern kitchens have adopted brining to enhance flavors, with herbs, spices, and even citrus added for unique twists. The Amish remind us that food preservation doesn't need to rely on technology or modern conveniences. Their creative techniques, rooted in tradition and respect for the land, ensure freshness while minimizing waste. In a time when refrigeration is taken for granted, their resourceful methods keep food fresh and delicious in a way that's both simple and sustainable.